Well, hello Gemini, welcome. Great to see those of you who have subscribed. I appreciate your loyalty and your interest in the channel, and for those of you who I'm seeing for the first time, welcome. And I hope you enjoy the reading as much as other people do. This is of course the Gemini January 2020 reading, and it is appropriate for those of you who have your sun in Gemini or who have a Gemini ascendant, such as myself, or who have moon in Gemini. In fact, it's really appropriate for anybody who has a lot of planets in Gemini in their natal chart. This deck, which I'm using today, was given to me by my daughter, who found it in a flea market. Now, I don't know much about it other than I've used it with great success, and it has interspersed between it on the different cards the Nordic Scandinavian runes, and some, the I Ching or I Ching from China on others, and mystical lettering. So when they come up, we'll see what they have to say for you as well, shall we? So let's get things underway. I'm going to first invoke Spirit. And because of the presence of the runes, which is very earthy, most of which were written on wood, and so as was a lot of the literature of the Vikings, it hasn't stood the test of time, and so we've pieced together over the years what meanings could be obtained from the runes. The runes were found by the god Odin by hanging upside down into the well of Ord, where they made themselves known to him and made known to him their mystical meanings. Let's get things underway, shall we? What do we have? We have the Emperor. Well, that's a great start for you, isn't it? The Father of the Swords in the South. Incidentally, just have a look at the back of these cards. Isn't it an interesting depiction and artwork there? So the Emperor and Father of Swords in the South. Let's see what else there is for you. Death. Excellent. And what a good time of year to receive that card. Now, I'm not giving anything away yet because the energies haven't started to coalesce, but they will do in just a second. There is the Nine of Wands. That, for you, is a particularly good card. Look, I think this is going to be a good set of messages for you. Let's see what else there is. Are you coming? Who are you? What do you have to say? The Son of Stones in the West. Well, why don't you come and sit down next to me, have a good close look at these cards while I do your reading for you. Okay, let me just get the vibe. Here we go. Let's go to this first card here, which is the Emperor. What can we say about the Emperor? Well, first of all, we have the glyph of Aries, and so the energy coming here is that of new. It's also energy of strength, of fire, of pioneering, of moving out. There is an emperor naked who holds in his hand a scepter, which no doubt was given to him by the Empress, and in here he holds the globe of creation. Above him is a diagram, a picture of a diamond, which has different colors, and that represents humanity at large. Now, this tree behind him, I mentioned that because there is a Norse rune here, I get very much a Nordic feeling about this, a Viking feeling about this card, and this tree is the tree of life, which held within its branches at various stages the 9 worlds of Viking cosmology and theology. But let's have a look at some of these interesting mystical depictions that are on here. Let's look first at this one here. This is a letter. It's from the biblical Hebrew alphabet, I suppose, and the letter is Hey, as it's called. Now, Hey represents divine revelation, the breath of the Creator, and I am reminded by Psalm, I think it's Psalm 33 verse 6, which says, By the word of the Lord the heavens were made, and by the breath of his mouth all of their host. Well, the world was created with the utterance of hey, and it represents the gift of life and creates the verb of being. Being comes from this letter. It is divinity, the spiritual life that comes about through the first 4 letters that are ahead of it in the Hebrew alphabet, because this is the 5th one. And it represents the life essence in all creation. It symbolizes the effortlessness of the world and is the symbol of divinity, of gentility, and of specificity. You have to forgive me, I can't talk. Specificity, you know what I mean. It contains, I think, within it also the freedom of choice. So we have free will, and you have the freedom of choice. This letter, Hey, is one of the letters in the holy name of Yahweh, which is contracted to 4 letters, Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. So it is, it has a special significance for that tradition. Let's now have a look at this rune here. Whoops. Excuse me while I just bash my head into the side of the camera. That's negligence there. Who would I sue? I'd have to sue myself, and knowing my luck, I would probably lose. So here we have the Nordic rune. Now, the Nordic runes were discovered by Odin, who hung upside down, actually, from the Tree of Life for 9 days and nights, without drinking, without eating, and after he had pierced himself with a spear, and he peered into this well at the bottom of the tree known as the Well of Erd, and within it dwelt, well, some creatures, women known as the Norns, who wove the fates of humans and of the gods. And it was within that well, after 9 days and nights, that the runes came up and were perceived. Now, they weren't just letters that represented human sounds, as our alphabets are, but they were also symbolically magic and provided a window into the world of the other realms, of the other 9 worlds in the Viking mythology. Well, this rune here is what? Let me just have a look at it. Well, that is Ansuz. Now, this rune represents the spoken word, communication, learning, the taking of advice, and the acquiring of wisdom. Let me just pull that out a bit so you can see it in context with other cards. Ansuz, when it appears for me, it really represents an intelligent individual who is full of energy. But be on the lookout for someone wiser than you who can give you good advice, maybe somebody older. Now, this rune, when it shows up near other runes, can mean that the advice may come from a close relative, probably your mother or another woman. If it is shown with another one called Othala, it will be an older relative. Or it can be with another rune altogether called Jera, a sort of an official person, like a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. Sometimes I think that this rune, and it may well be the case, that it can, I think, suggest an apprenticeship or a new trade under the guidance of somebody who can teach you a great deal. Answers may indicate some form of test as well. Now, this can be within a college, or it could be a job interview, or it could be training that you need to demonstrate that you have acquired the requisite knowledge. But this rune, when it is drawn, suggests that you now have the ability to get through whatever arises with ease. Now, we might say that what else does the Emperor suggest for you? Well, it's He's really somebody, I think, who is a builder, a doer, a visionary. I think that you'll be primarily concerned during this month with power or control over other people, or perhaps yourself. You'll be a natural leader and organizer, and you will exercise and attain power through the useful deployment of judgment which you have won through life experiences to date. Success, though, needs to be applied through discipline and focus. I think you'll be actually quite a rational thinker. Now, status is going to be important to you, I think, at this time. So is material security and stability. And it can sometimes suggest something of a volatility in the emotions, maybe being somewhat quite fiery. I don't really get the feeling that you are going to be passive or submissive at all during this time. I will say, however, that sometimes, having just said that there is sometimes when this card appears, the ability for dominance and submission in sexual matters, but that's a separate thing, and I won't go into it. I think what we can say here is, the words are just coming through now. Take me, O husband, draw me up unto you, O monarch of my soul. Well, what else can we say about this card? It's such a fantastic card to have, and it's the first one that you drew. So I think it's important to say this also, that during this period, I think you need to examine yourself critically, especially in regard to your relations with any subordinates that you have and superiors that you have. And say to yourself, I enjoy initiating projects. I value and honor my leadership ability. I am a responsible person. I trust my power. I rule by serving. I serve by ruling. Yep, okay. There is the Emperor and the messages that he has for you at this time. Now, it seems to me to be a sensible idea, because I'm getting this sort of warlike type of feeling coming through at the moment, and so I'm compelled, because I'm getting a feeling of war around this card as well. Now, you may ask, why am I getting any feeling of war or something around it in relation to this card? Well, first of all, we have these spears, don't we? They are in fact wands, though, because we can see the fire emanating from them, and of course the suit of wands is the suit of fire. 9 is a fantastic number, a sacred number. Now, what's this I Ching hexagram got to say here? When you see an I Ching hexagram, the broken lines are receptive, and they represent the yin principle, which is female. Unbroken lines are the male principle, and they are yang. So it's a mixture of yin and yang. And the lines of these together, the yin, the yang, and then the rest of them are yings. Yeah, well, okay, that really means organized discipline is what I'm getting from that. Discipline is symbolized by water under earth, a vital resource that is available but hidden, requiring effort to access it. Now, this potential for you can be drawn upon in times of need, and once it is accessed and applied, great things can be accomplished with organized discipline. Let me just draw this out a bit further, so that we can see the cards. Isn't it interesting, because there was this card which was talking really to you about the same types of things, about discipline, and this is talking about organized discipline as well in the I Ching hexagram. The most successful leader is not the one who triumphs on the battlefield, but the one able, through strength of discipline and inner power, to achieve a conciliation without spilling any blood. Likewise, in any large organizations, key virtues are discipline and conscientiousness. The most effective team marches with a single purpose, as these wands seem to be indicating here. and with a goal that's held dear by all. Even with an excess of external discipline, unpopular wars are seldom really winnable, So I think let power be held in check by the willing acceptance of common discipline and the submission to a higher authority for the common good. When life is in balance, evil impulses are checked by your decency, and it's about controlling that discipline. So it's about self-discipline there, and going forward to the highest good and to your aims. Well, what else can be said about it? I call this card the Lord of Great Strength. It is for me really the moon ruling the second decanate of Sagittarius, that period of the 3rd to the 12th of December. And in the number 9, we have also, for me, the association of the planet of the moon. Well, the moon's called a planet in astrology. So we have the moon in the number 9, and I have the planetary attribution as being the moon in Sagittarius. So we have a double lunar influence, as the moon is ruling both the decan and the number of the card. So I think what we're doing here is that we have determination, strength of character, courage under fire, defending what you have worked for, and a great belief in yourself. And of course, you should have a belief in yourself. Any lingering doubts or issues with self-esteem or lack of confidence should be dispelled. They certainly should be dispelled this month. This card is really about long-acting endurance, reaching into yourself to discover new depths of strength and power that you never thought that you had. Now, of course, you can encounter obstacles. Who doesn't? That's part of life. But you will have the strength to overcome them. When this 9 of Wands turns up in this position below the Emperor and in the same column at this movement across this way, you can be reassured that you have what it takes to get by. Even in times of difficulty and stress, inner strength is going to rise up and guide you towards your goal, and in the process you will learn more about yourself and your abilities and gain a new all-round perspective, which is going to bring you security and which is going to increase your self-confidence. I have this thought in mind, and it is, I know more and more clearly who I am. This recognition leads me to the full development of my potential strength. I think you can have some very vivid dreams as well, and I think it would be wise for you to pay attention to the dreams during this period. Let's have a look at him, because he's on this top line, and this is the card called, where are we? Can we see that? It's actually called Ra. Now, it might come as no surprise to you to know that Ra is the Egyptian god of the sun. It was known as the creator of all being, and the sustainer of life. This globe of the sun is surrounded by an asp. The asp, you might recall, was the snake with which Cleopatra, who was having an affair with Mark Antony, committed suicide by holding it to her breast. When the advancing forces of Mark Antony's bitter enemy in the civil war with Octavian came to a head in Egypt. But because the color is green, I see very much an association here with fertility and with renewal. Now, Ra was often associated with a falcon, and that's why he has a falcon's head here, and of course he's holding a staff. the creator of all things. Who is going to be important to you at this time? Well, I get a lot of Gemini out of this. I see this as being a card which has got you written all over it at this time. I think you might also have something to do with somebody who is a Taurus. This is somebody who has, well, because what we have is, we have the energy. The reason why I'm saying it's probably a Taurus as well, and I see you in it, is because this card is saying to me that there is the energy of the mind in Gemini with the influence of the stability and the determination of Taurus. Now, you remember I was talking about determination and moving ahead with things here, almost in a warlike systematic function. This is flowing through into this astrological attribution of this card for me as well. So I think that you're going to have something to do with Taurus, and I think this could very well relate to you during this month, because this is a person who is active and clever, skillful, fierce and courageous. But I have to say, I don't know that you're actually going to be all that reflective during this time. I think that you're going to make a decision, then act, make a decision and act. You're not going to sit around thinking of consequences about it, which is probably something at odds with the advice which was given to you by both the Emperor and the I Ching in the Nine of Wands, which was to, in some respects, align yourself with power. Now, I think that this god Ra, who is the father of sons, of swords in the south, I really see him as being the lord of the winds and breezes. If he's not soaring intellectually, he can get lost in the dark clouds of the mind. He is the fiery part of air. He is, the god is fire, and in swords it's air. So we have a very constructive energy. Fire and air get on really well, don't they? I think that there can sometimes be a danger of too much force being applied to small things, which you might actually, in reflection, think could be the result of pettiness or about you dominating things. Now, that's a poor application of your mind if that comes about. So what you need to do is to consider, with the advice of the other cards, is to say, use that great mind of yours to good effect. I think we can also see in here sometimes that maybe, now I don't know that this necessarily is you, but I'm just getting feelings of sort of rage, of revenge coming up in here as well, so keep a lid on that. But I do think that what this is signifying is that you will, I think, have a clear insight into a problem which has been bouncing around in your mind. You'll be working quickly to set the goals which have been foreshadowed by these two cards, and don't let anything get in the way. Just go ahead with it. I think that this is actually going to be quite a restless period where you are transitioning and trying to get somewhere else, either in your everyday life or could also be challenge. It's a restless period of movement and change. I'm just looking at this card here, which is influencing this, so I'll get to that next and we'll have a look at it. But here we have, what we have is really the message also, I think, for you to listen to your head rather than your heart. Now, I don't mean any disrespect by this, but just make sure that you're not kind of accused of being someone who lives in their head without any great degree of emotional expression. I don't think that will be the case with you, because this is a very warm feeling around this, and it's a very earthy reading. It's produced by these runes, and of course I've got this wood here as well, so I'm feeling that's not going to be a problem for you, just beyond it's a restless period. I'm getting restlessness here. in all the aspects of your life. Maybe you want to break free of your workplace or something like that. Yeah, that's just something that's very much coming through here. And it might be something that comes up with this next thing. Look, in a relationship setting, I've got to say that sometimes this energy here can represent the type of situation where you have a romantic relationship and it's on, and then you have a fight and break up, and then it's off, and you can't live with each other and it's on. Or you might know someone like this. It's going through that get together, break up, get together, break up, get together, break up. God, who signed up for this? You know, one or both of the parties are going to say, and you may know somebody that's like that during this period. And so don't be surprised if that comes up, because it's terribly wearing. I mean, it's something to remember and tell your grandchildren about in years to come, but gee, at the time it can be a drama, can't it? So who wants that life? That's what he has to say for you. That takes us now to this card here, which is Death. Now, it also has a couple of these interesting things on it. Of course, it's Major Arcana number 13 is the first thing I'll say. Now, here's this biblical Hebrew letter. What does that mean? And does it have something to say for you? Well, this letter is known as Nun. The Nun is the symbol of the faithful soul and of emergence. The Nun stands for humility, as it is bent both above and below. It represents the soul, the heavenly spark which is housed in the earthly container of the body. Now, in the old Aramaic language, which was the language that the Jesus figure and all the apostles, they all spoke in the Middle East at that time, Nun means fish. So Nun can be thought of as the fish that swims through the waters of life. It is connected to fertility, continuity, and the ability to increase and to multiply. Nun indicates, I think, for me, the constant presence and the humility of the soul. If that makes sense. I don't apologize for bringing some mysticism into these readings. I think it's a good thing to do. The soul is silent, bent and humble, constantly giving light, but constantly staying hidden. The Nun shows that to be bound to the Creator's will, not our own personal egotistic way, not to be bound to that, but we have to bend both above and below. And this letter shows the relationship between the body, which is impermanent, and the soul, which never dies. The soul is alive. That which is alive doesn't die. There's a lot that can be said about the nature of time and space, but I'm not going to go into that now. But I think what's important for you to understand is that this also represents flow, teaching you to be supple and flexible like the fish instead of resisting change. If you can be aware of your inner guide, the soul, you need never fear anything, because the Creator, the divinity, is always with you. Now, what we also have is this rune here. This is the Nordic rune, and this rune is called Bakana. Bakana is the family rune. Let me just give it a closer look for you so you can see it. Bakana, the family rune, and it refers to a happy family event. And it can often be a wedding or a birth or a get-together or a party. Or this rune can represent and mean the formation of an idea which is going to be very successful. It represents new beginnings. It can represent a new project. It can, for those of you who are unpartnered, represent a new romance. something anyway that is going to bring you happiness. That's what's coming around. Something in this month is going to be bringing you happiness. Now, if you're a woman, this can often represent you. And it represents the forces that are around you. If you are a man, it is likely to represent a woman in your life with whom you have the closest relationships. Oh, I think sometimes it can represent your mother. If you have any schemes or plans underway, the advice of this rune is to implement them right away, because this rune, Bakana, is especially fortunate in the outcome in any drawing of the rune in a rune casting. Yeah, can mean marriages, can mean births. Yeah, fantastic to have. Anyway, that having been said, what can we say about the rest of this card? Because this is death. Now, we see here a couple of things which are interesting. It's first of all given the attribution of Scorpio. That is correct. This card is governed by Scorpio. Scorpio is the house of, well, it is the house in astrological terms of death and of transformation, as well as of sex. Sex kind of has a role in every house somewhere or other, but particularly Scorpio rules those areas of death and transformation. This is an eagle here, and you may know that Scorpio has three forms. It has, first of all, let me pull out so it doesn't go out of focus all the time. It has the scorpion itself, which then transforms into a snake, which is undulating, representing male and female, representing life and death. And then in its exalted, that is, in its kind of divine form, it is depicted by the eagle. So when you see an eagle, often in tarot or in astrology, it is a representation of Scorpio. Now here, of course, is the hand of the skeleton sticking up with the scythe around it. Gee, I kind of get a feeling of Saturn around whenever I see a scythe like that. Things which are slow and deliberate and a bit of a taskmaster. But the thing is, though, that, you see, this is about transformation for you, and that I Ching, where was it? No, it wasn't an I Ching. It was a rune. Yeah, the rune was talking about, something was talking about transformation there. We have the idea that, well, this is the child of the great transformers, the lord of the gate of death, and it is Scorpio ruled by Mars. Now, Mars, the planet of fiery energy in its lowest form, which is rambunctious and aggressive and pushes, but that's sometimes necessary to provoke you into undertaking change, right? Scorpio, as I say, has those three parts to it. It has the hard shell. Now, Scorpio is a water sign, and you can also think of it like this. The scorpion has the hard shell, which is like ice. The snake, which undulates, which is like liquid. And then the eagle, which is like gas or vapor, which rises up into the air. So there is a real feeling here of endings, of mortality, of letting go, of emotional attachment. So it's the end of an era or a cycle, or particularly about reconstruction. It's about reconstruction, I think, in your case. It's right in the middle of the spread here, so it's got something quite important to say to you, clearly. And I think that it is that something in your life is dying, dissolving, disintegrating, whether it be a structure that you have created, or a pattern, like a pattern of thought, and a way of thinking about yourself, or a habit, or your way of thinking about the world. Now, this is necessary for new beginnings and transformation in your life. I think that this is a period of transformation, and it might even involve you facing, some of your darkest fears. But remember that it is darkest just before the dawn, and this is an extremely positive card. Because in order to grow, you need to abandon the old. And death really is your protection against stagnation. We are forced, I think you are going to be forced to leave behind what you have outgrown. It's about facing your fears and breaking limits. You need to grow, to learn your life lessons. It's time to cut away those things, all those people, let's be honest, who don't necessarily serve you anymore in your life. People come into our lives and they come out of our lives. So have no fear of that. Okay, I think what we should do is move then, because of time, to this thing, the Son of Stones. Here is the depiction of, well, the card is called Chief Seattle. And here we see the chief, and above him is a depiction of a whale with a lightning strike going between it. And that really is a depiction, isn't it, of the connection between, and again, this is a very earthy reading for you, a depiction of the connection between humans and the natural world. Well, we are in the natural world. We are a part of it. We are not separate to it. So that's just the way things are. Now, Chief Seattle was he was an Indian chief. I think he died in about 1866. Suquamish tribe, I think, is what I'm getting from memory. In any event, he was somebody who worked very closely with and facilitated the integration of the settlers in the state of Washington in northwest continental United States, and the Indian tribes of which he was the chief. In fact, so successful was he in avoiding bloodshed and in managing to obtain some sort of reasonable resolution and conciliation between, well, on one view were settlers and on another view were invaders, that he had the city of Seattle in Washington named after him. And there is subsequently a statue to him. I remember reading some years ago that a statue of him was erected above his grave. Anyway, he is air, and he's in the suit of earth. Now, air and earth are enemies in elemental dignitary rules. He is the prince of the chariot of the earth. Earth and air are enemies, and they weaken one another, so we can expect some sort of a conflict in his nature. Who could it be? It could be an Aries. It could be a Taurus, is what I'm getting, as someone who you may be having dealings with in this period who has these sorts of characteristics. But the message, well, I'll get to the characteristics secondly, but first of all, the message that he has for you is that you are going to be energetic, capable manager, slow to anger, which is conflicting with the advice that was coming through earlier that it could well have sometimes. So that's why you see there's that inner conflict within this character. So just watch your emotions during this period is what he's saying, because if you do get moved to anger, then God forbid anybody who gets in the way. I think you'll be competent, hardworking, reliable. Look, quite materialistic, I've got to say, but very focused. You could be stubborn, and again, the impression that I'm getting is, and it's because of this warlike approach to getting things done, is that some people may think, and just be aware that you don't give people reason to think that you in some way have a lack of emotional warmth. I think it's a time when you will be taking responsibility for your life and becoming focused. Health is going to be important to you. And I think that you may be interested in, well, I think you'll take up some sort of physical exercise during the period. And I think you may well be interested in designing and building things or using space and color. It can also extend to fashion and clothing and hair and makeup and things like that. That's something which is going to be, and if you're a man, well, you may be wearing hair and makeup things as well. Nothing wrong with that. It's not me, but it's a big world. Then I think that these things are going to be important to you, and in particular, you're going to be very good at it. I think you will be putting a lot of effort into practical things. It's a time in your life when you are going to become goal-oriented, which is what we've been seeing the whole way through here, haven't we? Goal-oriented and want to sort out the material side of your life. That is those things to do with health, career things, those things that are tangible to you. Look, I find a physical creative activity in which you find joy and fulfillment and burn off some of this energy which is building up in you, I think. And I think I'd also have this thought in mind that I am finding the work that fulfills me and satisfies me. I think you'll be using resources to apply to practical things that bring about material reward for your efforts. So those things that you do, they're going to pay off and you're going to have good success with them. I think what happens is that you need to make sure that you do complete things, though, is what I'm getting from this guy, is that there's a requirement to make sure that you complete those things that you start. And I think what is a shadow side to him, with due respect, Chief Seattle, is to be on guard against complacency. But this is still a very positive attribute and a very positive card for you. Well, that's the way it is for you this month. Well, there you go, January 2020. I have to say this, that you were absolutely fantastic during that reading, and I loved doing it for you. I think this is going to be a great year for you, and have a fantastic January. And all I have to say is this, and remember always that you are a legend, and I look forward to seeing you again next month. Until then, bye for now.